Documented in 1873 inside Pentonville Prison, London, a routine administrative photograph was commissioned to record the inmates of D Wing, cell block 4. The image shows 23 men arranged in 3 rows before the eastern courtyard wall. They stand in regulation prison dress, broad arrow-marked jackets, cropped hair, hands clasped at their sides. According to the prison's intake ledger for that quarter, D Wing cell block 4 housed exactly 22 inmates. The photograph contains 23. This discrepancy has been known among archival researchers as the extra inmate. Let us examine what is visible. The photograph is a single album in print, slightly sepia in its aging, with a thin white border consistent with institutional documentation of the period. The courtyard wall behind the men is featureless brick, interrupted only by a narrow drainage channel running along its base. The men are arranged with military precision, 8 standing in the back row, 8 seated in the middle row, and 7 kneeling in the front. 7 in the front, 8 in the middle, 8 in the back. That is 23. Every face is visible. Every man is distinct. No double exposure. No obvious blur that might suggest movement or overlap. 23 separate individuals occupy 23 separate positions in the frame. The prison's quarterly intake register, now held in the National Archives at Kew under reference PCOM2, Series 291, lists the inmates of D Wing cell Block 4 by name, conviction, and date of admission. The list contains 22 names, not 23. 22. The first formal pass at this image, the objective survey, reveals nothing immediately wrong to a casual observer. The lighting is flat and even, consistent with an overcast English afternoon. Shadows fall uniformly to the left, suggesting the photograph was taken in the late morning hours. The men's faces range from gaunt to weathered, their ages spanning perhaps 20 to 60 years. Several have visible scars. One man in the middle row appears to have a bandaged left hand. Return to the image. Count again. Back row, left to right, 8 men. Middle row, 8 men, including the one with the bandaged hand. Front row, kneeling, 7 men. 23. Now, in 1874, a prison clerk named Albert Marsh Seddon filed an internal memorandum that surfaced during a Home Office audit in 1911. The memorandum is dry, bureaucratic, and only 4 paragraphs long. But the second paragraph is extraordinary. Seddon writes, and I will use his exact phrasing, quote, "Upon reconciling the photographic record of D Wing, Block 4, with the intake register, I find a surplus of 1 figure. I have matched each named inmate to a position in the photograph by means of physical description, as recorded at admission. 22 matches were made without difficulty. The 23rd figure, standing at the far right of the back row, corresponds to no entry in the register." End quote. The far right of the back row. Return to the image. The man standing at the far right of the back row is partially cut off by the edge of the frame. His right shoulder disappears beyond the photograph's border. His face, however, is fully visible. He appears younger than most of the others, perhaps in his mid-20s. His expression is neutral. His prison jacket bears the same broad arrow markings as every other man in the image. He looks like he belongs there. That is what makes this difficult. Seddon's memorandum prompted a secondary review. A senior warder named Thomas Creel was asked to examine the photograph and identify the unknown figure. Creel had served at Pentonville for 11 years. He knew D Wing intimately. Creel's affidavit, filed alongside Seddon's memorandum, states the following, quote, "I do not recognize the man at the right extremity of the back row. He was not among the prisoners in my charge. I have no knowledge of a transfer, a visitor, or a tradesman who might account for his presence. The photograph was taken under my direct supervision. No unauthorized person entered the courtyard. End quote. No unauthorized person entered the courtyard. And yet the image shows 23 men. The forensic dimension deepens when we consider the photographic process itself. The camera used for Pentonville's institutional records in 1873 was almost certainly a wet plate collodion apparatus. Exposure times ranged from 5 to 15 seconds, depending on light conditions. Every man in this photograph had to remain still for the duration of the exposure. Look at the image again. There is no ghosting, no transparency, no telltale blur around the 23rd figure that would indicate he appeared partway through the exposure or moved during it. He is as solid, as sharply defined, as every other man in the frame. He stood there. He stood still. He waited for the shutter to close. In 1987, a photographic historian named Dr. Isabel Fenn examined the original print under magnification as part of a broader study on Victorian penal documentation. Her report, published in the Journal of the Photographic Historical Society, Volume 41, notes that the emulsion density around the 23rd figure is entirely consistent with the rest of the image. There is no evidence of compositing, double printing, or later manipulation. Dr. Fenn's conclusion is careful. She writes, quote, "The figure is photographically indistinguishable from the authenticated inmates. If it is a fabrication, it was achieved by means I cannot identify." End quote. Return once more to the image. 23 men before a brick wall. Flat light. Broad arrow jackets. Cropped hair. The drainage channel at their feet. The man at the far right of the back row. His shoulder lost beyond the frame's edge. His face clear and calm and young. He matches no name in the register. No warder claimed him. No transfer record accounts for him. No photographic technique of the era explains him. There is one final detail that has received less attention than it perhaps deserves. Seddon's memorandum includes a brief postscript, added in different ink, suggesting it was written at a later date. It reads, quote, "I have since been informed that a prisoner matching the general description of the unidentified figure died in the infirmary of Pentonville Prison on the 14th of March, 1873. The photograph was commissioned on the 16th of March, 1873. The prisoner's name was not on the D-Wing register because he had been transferred to the infirmary on the 27th of February and was struck from the block's active roll. His name was Edward Callahan." End quote. Edward Callahan died 2 days before the photograph was taken. He was no longer on the register because he was no longer alive. Look at the image one final time. The man at the far right of the back row. Calm. Still. Solid as brick. Wearing the uniform of a prison he had already departed. The photograph remains in the National Archives. The intake register remains in the National Archives. Seddon's memorandum remains in the National Archives. They have never been reconciled. 22 names. 23 men. If Edward Callahan is not the figure at the far right of the back row, then who is? And if he is, how? Leave your assessment below.